Spasenovic, and today I will talk about my research in the paper for the 13th Sinan Symposium titled User Perception of Living Heritage in Contemporary City, Social Contextual and Historical Responsibility. It is regarding responsibility in architecture analyzed through user experience and spatial cognition of the environment. So I will first give an overview of some of the main questions and problems raised in this paper, as well as goals and the overall research trajectory. So we can say that the unique character of urban landscapes is a threat from fast urbanization and globalization. So therefore, the urban city development in the modern day is focused on two main ideas. First is sustainability, and secondly, the conservation of the overall place individuality that makes a certain area unique and above all recognizable. These ideas reflect the value system and thinking of contemporary society. In this paper, we will focus on the conservation of the place uniqueness. It is extremely important to understand an urban place, how it lives and functions, before making any suggestions for its transformation. If the goal of development is to preserve place uniqueness, new development policies must be open to innovative techniques of analysis and valorization of space. Highlighted as specifically problematic is heritage of the 20th century, which in many conservation initiatives, policies, or guidelines does not have a clear direction for conservation. So the aim of this work is to create a method for urban space analysis based on the visual experience of the observer, in other words, user experience, in order to clearly determine the current position of recent date heritage in contemporary context from the perspective of space users. User experience will be defined through the way users visually observe the urban context or register spatial interrelationships and form an opinion about the space that surrounds them. And on the next slide, I will explain the proposed methodology further. So we will define and research the concept of visual responsibility through the evaluation of social, contextual, and historical spatial cues, because our goal is to create a method for analyzing the visual perception of the observer and employ it in defining the connection users form with the immediate environment. The premise of the work is that a proper assessment of urban landscape from the user's standpoint can be done through the analysis of visual relationships formed between the object in the targeted area of research. The research is divided into three parts. First segment lays the research basis through the presentation of significant development axis in the modern era, where, as we said before, the preservation of uniqueness of urban places is extremely important. And in this part, emerging heritage stands out as a particularly sensitive segment of the urban landscape. The second part of research defines the relationship between the user and space as important for the overall comprehension of place uniqueness, with that highlighting understanding the values that people instill in the urban space are as most important for its preservation. And in this way, we can say that we establish the concept of visual responsibility, which is additionally explored in the third segment of the paper through a case study. So the term living heritage refers to all intangible characteristics of heritage that influence their understanding and interpretation, such as different embedded historical, cultural, psychological, historical, or contextual values. And this phenomenon describes immaterial and elusive characteristics of heritage. We often predominantly focus on technological aspects of object preservation, while we neglect these intangible values embedded in heritage. The value of cultural heritage does not derive from the profits and business it encourages, but rather from its inherited values. The contemporary city interprets heritage not only as a static legacy of the past, but also as a generator of new social, environmental, or contextual changes. So heritage values are beginning to be assessed as much as its tangible features. The challenge is to recognize good development strategies that are applicable in different contexts and enable adequate, let's say, articulation of recognized values. So now let's discuss what is emerging heritage. Recognizing heritage from recent history as important and worthy of conservation is not only problematic from the perspective of an, let's say, average observer, but also from the viewpoint of a wider scientific audience. And in this category, the very rich legacy of the 20th century is particularly noteworthy. A large number of initiatives deal with the conservation and technical preservation of these buildings with the aim of bringing them closer to modern standards of construction and dwelling. But insufficient research recognizes the preservation of intangible values embedded in heritage objects as important, despite the fact that these values are key for protecting place identity. So the question raised here is, how do we preserve these immaterial values, and where does the sense of responsibility come to play? When we discuss values that heritage carries in the modern urban context, it is important to consider the relationship between users and space. People who live in a certain environment or neighborhood form strong perceptual connections to the context that carries a certain meaning for them. And objects that have high, let's say, historical, social, or ambient values create in the observer a sense of responsibility towards the preservation of these intangible characteristics. So the sense of responsibility towards these values instilled in the objects come from the desire to maintain stability through the preservation of historical continuity. And when we observed any built structure, users form a mental record of the observed composition, which, depending on various factors, can create a clear mental map of the scene. Mental maps allow us to, at the same time, remember the space and then reimagine it. Many characteristics of the context, such as hierarchy, colors, textures, or volumes, highlight the observed as unique and different from other places. And in the process of cognitive perception of the built structure, we actually perceive the interrelationship between different physical elements, which help us create a mental image of the place or a mental map. These relationships can be divided into two groups, and the first are relationships that we remember based on the contrast in relation to the rest of the composition, and the second are relationships that we group according to perceived similarities. So the main processes we can say are grouping and contrast. On this slide, we can actually see the preview of some of the most important architectural theories discussing user experience and cognitive response, such as Kevin Lynch, Norbert Schultz, concept of mental maps, let's say psychogeography, and so on. In order to define the model of visual responsibility, we have to determine characteristics of place, or in other words, spatial relationships that create our impression of the observed place. So the basis of the new model is the townscape concept formulated by architect Gordon Cullen in the 60s. The concept of townscape or urban scene analysis was chosen for this paper because it includes in its research at the same time the built and immaterial structure that is woven into the urban fabric of the city. Townscape acknowledges the impact of economic, social, and other urban flows that shape a distinct urban locale. And the concept definition was given by the British architect Gordon Cullen, who said that one building is architecture, but two buildings is a townscape. For as soon as two buildings are juxtaposed, the art of townscape is released. And this particularly highlights at the same time the importance of spatial interrelationships that we have talked about before. So the image on the screen right now represents the townscape notation system, which is the basis for our new model development. The illustrated table presents sensory spatial cues that the observer perceives and remembers while passing through a certain zone. These elements are physical in nature, but they carry information about other invisible spatial cues that have a specific historical, ambient, or functional values. Visual responsibility model is defined through the following relationship of the urban space. The first is a rhythm of object silhouettes. Secondly, hierarchy of physical volumes, change of topography, dynamics of the landscape. Next is elevation plans, contact with the wider environment, and contrasting physical elements such as color, material, facade, openings, etc. And these will be the guidelines for our analysis. After we have set the parameters of the visual responsibility model, we can investigate it further through a case study. Since our topic is emerging heritage of 20th century, I have chosen New Belgrade as a polygon for the study, more precisely the residential block 28, which was built between 1969 and 1979. We can say that a special challenge in the emerging heritage analysis are buildings of the residential typology. In the perception of the observer, the housing category often represents the everyday urban landscape, which is sometimes not recognized as particularly valuable from the perspective of conservation. The case study within this paper will analyze the protected zone of residential typology in the capital of Serbia. The residential blocks of New Belgrade were built, as I said, in the second half of the 20th century and have been designated by the Institute for the Protection of Monuments of Belgrade as a zone of exceptional historical and architectural value. New Belgrade rests on modernist principles and illustrates the new social and architectural order through modern standards of construction, housing, and infrastructure. And next, in this map of immovable cultural property of New Belgrade, we can actually see the position of the block in the wider city area. It is marked red, and block 28 has been selected for its obvious liminal position, and it is now bordering with various typologies and buildings from different periods, ranging from educational to modern business and commercial facilities. And now we embark on the case study. The case study is conducted through the previously set 5 criteria for the valorization of visual responsibility. The first is the rhythm of the silhouette, and it illustrates the diametrically opposite dynamics of the urban front on the two sides of the street. Block 28 is characterized by a dynamic silhouette with an alternation of linear uniform objects and high landmarks, which are residential towers. It is a front of office buildings, which builds a dominantly uniform line without exceptional notations. This distribution of elements actually creates two different impressions for the user, where block 28 stands out as unique and contrasting, and the block of office buildings as a uniform grouped stimuli. Now we move to the hierarchy of volumes, and this criteria also supports the previous claim. The volume that build a unique urban silhouette participate in the creation of contrast in favor of block 28, which with its continuous structure full of different visual attractors arouses the attention of the observer. The third criterion of analysis, the dynamics of topography, and it does not appear to be overly relevant for the selected case study. Since New Belgrade has a mostly uniform level terrain morphology, not a single spatial attribute causes a greater intensity of perception in the observer. And so we can move out to the analysis of the fourth spatial relationship, which is the elevation, and it can actually be interpreted quite similarly at the stimuli level within the two zones of interest. Block 28, although it is rich in contrast and forms a dynamic hierarchy of volumes, is defined by a clear visual border, let's say a barrier that is formed through a continuity of the street front. A similar situation occurs in the business zone across the street, within which a solid visual barrier is defined with very little perceptual porosity, making the plan solid and perceptually impermeable. And moving to the fifth criterion, the contrasted physical elements. This represents another relationship that makes the perceptual experience more dynamic and intense in favor of block 28. The characteristic facade openings located on the longitudinal residential building introduce a new rhythm into the perception of the facade, which in the contrasted stimuli introduces a new grouping through the dynamics of the openings that additionally make the area recognizable and striking. So now discussing the results of the case study. The case study of New Belgrade confirms that the model of visual responsibility defined through a scientific review of relevant theoretical foundations is applicable in the physical context. All parameters lead to the common conclusion that the protected zone of block 28 stands out as perceptually significant in relation to the immediate context, which defines its wider recognition. And considering visual perception as the main parameter, although the two zones are from different time periods, typology, and overall appearance, they create a continuous experience for the observer and enable a good balance of attention intensity in favor of block 28. And let's say in a hypothetical case that the opposite zone is visually more dominant, it may create an excessive contrast with high intensity of perception and have a negative effect on the observer, which we call perceptual fatigue, which makes it impossible to perceive the zone of interest as a pure stimuli. And the way in which we discovered that the immediate context of heritage develops greatly, it greatly influences its understanding and wider recognition. The new knowledge we acquire through the case study is important of the visual quality of the immediate context, which can be included as the sixth criterion of the analysis of spatial relationships in the model of visual responsibility, which will be explored further in some future research. So let's summarize maybe the most important question: what is visual responsibility? After the conducted research, it can be concluded that visual responsibility represents a duty to preserve intangible values embedded in heritage existing in contemporary urban environment, and it is manifested through defined characteristics and relationships that we perceive in the analyzed space. The described values are merits of social and historical significance embedded in various contextual determinants. And I will finish this presentation with discussing future research trajectories. They will focus on establishing a model of visual responsibility as an objective and widely applicable instrument for context analysis, with particular reference to emerging heritage. New case studies in different contexts can further confirm the relevance of now 6 criteria of visual responsibility analysis. The challenge of future research, especially from the aspect of objectivity in the application of the defined method, is to understand how different groups of the observer, depending on culture, gender, and age, see heritage and instill unique values in these objects. And this diversification of values conditions future research, which must refer not only to the relationships that are formed in physical space, but also to the relations that are conditioned through the observer. And with that, I will finish today's presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
We also thank you, Ms. Vanya Spesinovic. I guess she was able to connect for a moment or so, but then I think she was again disconnected. So maybe at the end we can receive the whole questions and criticism of the whole papers as a whole. That would be maybe more gathering the whole idea of the session. Otherwise, if you have any questions at the moment or something, we would like to receive it after the maybe second presentation. So welcome, Fauzi Vibo. I guess you will be presenting the paper titled Examining the Pedestrian Movement in a Commercial Passageway Building, Grand Beşiktaş Bazar. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, welcome. Please.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen first. Can you see my screen at the moment, just to make sure? Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes, we see it. Thank you. It's clear.
Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Fauzi Wibowo. I come from Indonesia, studying Masters in Architecture at Özyeğin University. First of all, I'd like to thank all the symposium committee of Trakya University and beloved professors here, colleagues and participants in this valuable symposium. So today I'll be talking about my presentation called Examining the Pedestrian Movements in Commercial Passageway Buildings in the case of Grand Beşiktaş Bazar. So this research was done in the scope of a course in my university called Spatial Systems in Architecture Urban Space course, conducted by Assistant Professor Nevşet Gülşanakçıoğlu, who also is my thesis advisor at the moment, and also with Professor Alper Ünlü. Yes, let's start. As outlines, I have the 5 different points, starting with the introduction, then theoretical background, then dataset and methods, ending with result and conclusions. As introduction, I would like to start by saying that the pedestrian movement and walkability can change in terms of human density because of the morphological characteristics of the neighborhoods. And we can also say that time play a role in walkability in such a way that it could change in peak hours. So in this context, this research, which contributes to the human movement in particular spatial configuration, is concentrated on the plane-based syntax parameters. Urban design is widely actually suggested that it should address, or we can say it should direct the specific context in fractions, and of course it should be related with the layout of the streets, which affects the orientation, nature, performance of the building improvements. And especially in the light of the pedestrian movements in urban areas, many studies have been also introduced in the literature. We can also mention that the character of the streets has been accounted with the information regarding the accessibility neighborhood towards the pedestrians. And it is also underlined that the importance of the distinguishing or differentiating the measure of the street connectivity in design towards the walkability in such a way that the urban design should address the specific context that can affect the walking modes. So I'm talking about the shopping space here. The emergence and the spatial changes of shopping spaces have been extensively studied in the literature. We start with this concept of the trade initially comes from the ancient times to the present date today, about the activity of purchasing of goods and services. And the evolution of shopping spaces started from the marketplaces, and it evolved into the complex spatial structures as shopping malls today in time. And the needs or the necessity of humans is the reason behind the emergence of the shopping spaces. And of course, the invention of money resulted the trade activities, also the development of the trade, evolving the trade center. So it can be said that the trade concept has continually become a factor that constantly changes the spatial form of the shopping spaces. One of the main factors of shopping activity is, of course, we should mention consumerism, in which the initial shopping activity is adapted in the 20th century with passages, and we can define, we can also define that shopping units arranged in line under a building unit altogether. And also there's some marketplaces we can mention, like type of marketplaces beforehand, like shops, passages, which is a close area of shopping units for pedestrians, hunts, the trade centers, bedestans, and bazaars. And finally, it turned out to shopping malls until today. The first shopping mall ever was come out and built in the late 1980s. It was Galleria Mall in Bakırköy at the moment. Also other malls such as Özdilek, Canyon, Akmerkez, Metro City shopping malls, etc. Also, they're mainly distributed all over Istanbul nowadays. Choosing shopping malls to spend free time has also become largely preferred way to socialize in daily routines of people, but mainly in metropolitan cities in Turkey throughout the time. Only few research focus on commercial passageway buildings in terms of their spatial transformations on usage and how the trading activities, how the shopping activities change in time. So this research aims to understand the relationship between the pedestrians' behaviors and syntactical data of the commercial building called as Grand Beşiktaş Bazar, Büyük Beşiktaş Çarşısı, located in Beşiktaş district. And the research questions ask in which specific modes of activity do visitors dominantly adopt in GBB, Grand Beşiktaş Bazar? And the other research question asks, how do integration and visibility values of syntactical data affect the pedestrians' behavior? So the research hypothesized that the GBB, Grand Beşiktaş Bazar, is mostly used as a passageway, and the pedestrians passing activity would be dominant through the building transitionally, rather than the shopping activity. I'll be talking about the theoretical background on pedestrian movements in urban commercial environment here. I would like to mention some theoretical framework here with some main keywords, such as natural movement principles that was introduced by Bill Hillier in here, emphasized as the connection between movement densities and urban grid structure. And the other one, multiplier effect, also. This is considered as the interrelationship between movement, grid structure, densities, and land uses. And the other one is actually the three main elements of Hillier, the origin, destination, and the series of spaces, which passes along the way from one point to one another. In here, since I will be using space syntax method in my study, I will give brief information about the space syntax method, space syntax analysis method. So space syntax is a theoretical framework, or we can say set of analytical techniques for studying the spatial configuration for buildings and also urban environments. So this specific space syntax is developed by Bill Hillier and his colleagues, such as Julianne Hanson at University College of London. This is based on the idea that the spatial layout and configuration have fundamental, or we can say the vital impact on human behavior, social interactions, and urban form. So the space syntax is applied in wide range of fields, including urban planning, architecture, geography, and sociology. So this is the location of my case study in Istanbul, Beşiktaş. Just a brief information about that. So this is the GBB in dense network of Beşiktaş. As you can see here in the map, again, we can see number 1 is GBB and the following number S2 Sinan Paşa passage connecting to the GBB, and the other one is also a Kuyumcular passage here. And we have some landmarks in Eagle statue in Beşiktaş, also the Naval Museum, and we have mosque here, Sinan Paşa Mosque. This is the front facade of Grand Beşiktaş Bazaar, and I will be giving the details in the future sections. The interior of the building, the layout of the building. The activity of walking, either exploratory or directed, suggests that walking activity needs perceptual and cognitive connections which traverse through the spaces. And we can also mention some factors that affect walking through some main concepts, such as land use, street connectivity, and density. The high population density also has a connection with walking attraction, but also on the other hand, we can also say that in the light of the walking attractions, streets that consist of more commercial areas have higher densities of walkability. Also, we can mention the other studies that infer that the directional changes of pedestrians are also considered relatively associated not only to the street connectivity, but also cognitive factors of the users. In the dataset and methods, this paper, this research focuses on the behavioral and syntactical outcomes of the case study conducted in GBB. In the first part, it was the historical background of the building and the importance of its location mentioned, while in the second part, how the behavioral and syntactical datasets are revealed, which constitute two datasets of the study. To give in detail about the Grand Beşiktaş Bazaar, briefly about the history of the building. It was built in 1985, which also known as Post Office Bazaar because of the location of PTT, the Turkish Post, on the basement floor. So on the other hand, it is the semi-open building with an atrium here. We can see it consists of parking lots on the rooftop and has many type of shops distributed on the floors. And since this is one of the unique features of the bazaars, has been claimed in the importance of the religion in the Ottoman period carried out to the existing mosque nearby. The GBB also can be considered as this Ottoman period that carried out until now, because it has a mosque, which have you seen maybe the Sinan Paşa Mosque nearby. and this GBB located in the Köyceği neighborhood. It's located in Beşiktaş, which indeed in the heart of European side of Istanbul, that can be considered as a central location that connects to continents. So if we talk about the historical background of Beşiktaş, the area has been a settlement where different ethnic groups, different type of people have lived together, and it has a wide range of residential, commercial buildings, which significant educational institution, historical and cultural touristic places, which while the district is currently also facing with the urban sprawl. As a methodology of the study, started with this CAD drawing of the building, and then determined the number of the gates and convex spaces and vantage points of the analysis. The plan was analyzed through Syntax 2D software. And then also there's also observational survey of pedestrians was conducted to reveal the behavioral modes. And in the context of the observation, the number of pedestrians were counted through video and photo documentations in every 5 minutes time interval at the peak hours of the day. And lastly, statistical tests were conducted to search whether there are behavioral data, if there is correlations between behavioral data and the behavioral results through SPSS. So this is the layout of the building, and as you can see, it's aligned to this map. This is the rooftop, as you can see here. This car park on the top. We have 8 gates. As you can see, there are 8 different entrances to the building, since the ground floor level is slightly elevated. This G1 has access with slight slope oriented towards the urban street here, the urban street, and the G2 and G3 have access with stairs here, facing the car park road, which is this one, which also connects to the main streets. As you can see, this also the main street, and G4 and G5 have access with stairs from the public squares here. And the G6 has access with stairs here. With stairs also, actually, there's some stairs from the street that connects the public square. This is the public square somewhere here. And G7 and G8 are different than others because they have access from passages, which is this one, G7 and G8. We'll see in the future slide. And here, this is the G7 and G8. We have connection to other passages here. So the blue shades of blue color shades in here is the convex spaces that signify the circulation zones in the shopping spaces. It's called convex spaces. Although there are 2 gallery voids in here, this one and this one, in the building, they have been accepted as unified to the other circulation zones, since they do not prevent the visibility, and the white zones are representing the retail units. So there are 3 circular staircases in here, which also not included in the convex spaces. I'm going to talk about the results now. So the results are classified into the 2 parts, behavioral result and syntactical results. So the behavioral results reveal the behavioral frequencies of the pedestrians, while the syntactical results reveal the integration, mean depth, isovis area, perimeter occlusivity, circularity, and compactness values in space syntax analysis. So these measures can be used to identify the key spaces or nodes in the network, as well as to predict the patterns of movement and interaction within the network. So the activity modes were considered in 3 types, such as walking, hanging out as a group, and hanging out as an individual. In here, hanging out activities were considered as the activities of pedestrians. I'm just going forward here, not mentioning the numerical data to move faster. In here, as a area analysis in each gateway and vantage point, we can see some points here dotted in here in the middle of the black area. So this is the ISOVIS area, the black area, which I pointed from one place, and we can see all the vantage point, all the visible area in black place. It's also known as visual field or visual extent, that measure used in space syntax analysis to describe visual properties of space. So I will move forward. In here, gateway 6 and gateway 4, gateway 6 and gateway 4, it has the lowest point in here in the 4, and 6 has the highest one. In occlusivity value in here, as you can see in the building of the occlusivity value, showed that the upper part of the floor plan in the gateway numbered 1, 2, 3, and 11 have high intensity because they were obviously occluded by other spaces compared to the other gateways. Just moving forward faster. I'm sorry to taking some time. We have 3 correlations here: ISOVIS drift and total activity, and ISOVIS drift to walking, and ISOVIS area to hanging out as a group. Just to give a brief information about the drift in space syntax, it refers to the tendency of pedestrians to move along certain routes, or we can say paths within the spatial network or environment, even in the absence of explicit directional. So here also I've mentioned some ISOVIS area that correlated with hanging out, ISOVIS drift to total activity and to the walking. As a conclusion, we can say that the outcomes obtained from the analysis from the overall spatial configuration of the Grand Beşiktaş Bazaar in here is mainly built, although it is mainly built for shopping activity, the mode of passing by, because of the existence of connection, the two different passages and other entrances oriented toward the urban streets dominated in time. Occlusivity helped to support the information occluded area, have attracted the activity of hanging out as a group or individual. So ISOVIS area and drift turned out to be statistically significant, and due to the visibility level of the building, it has the vital role to lead the pedestrian moving along, and the building also has the facilitate as a transitional building or passageway to the pedestrians. Thus, it can be partially concluded that the building may evaluate it as a transitional building for pedestrians, supporting their customs serves as public responsibility connected to urban space. And the study can be improved by adding several commercial buildings conducted in different time and occasions to be compared with each other. Thank you very much for listening. I'm sorry for taking so much time.
Thank you, Fauzi Bo. And yeah, that's okay. So I was a little bit late, 5 minutes, and we are just 5 minutes over. Thank you for your kind presentation. It will be much better to take the questions at the end to keep it in time. So I would like to welcome Murat Seçkin Puyan, Gertrude Olson, Kutalmış Samet Bayraktar with the paper titled Reuse of Edirne Balloon Hangar Building in the Light of Other Similar Practices of the Period. So thank you so much.
Yes, I would like to say that the third presentation will be shown by Kutalmış Samet Bayraktar.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we would like to welcome Kutalmış Samet Bayraktar.
Here we go. So let me share my screen. Okay. First of all, I would like to greet to all the audiences and to moderator Professor DEVİREN. And we are 3 people here to take that topic. Our title is Reuse Proposal of the Edirne Balloon Hangar. That is the study before with many other researchers, but we also would like to look to the context, in the context of the national identity and the responsibility to cultural heritage, the complex process of the repurposing historical buildings. Sorry for that, forget to Dr. Seçkin Puyan from the Trakya University and Associated Professor Yahut Olson from the Göteborg University, and I am the PhD candidate, School of Architecture, Track University. The complex process of repurposing historical buildings includes adapting them to present in order to transfer them to future while preserving their historical values. In this research, we considered the Edirne balloon hangar, which is built in 1912. In the date, maybe some people doesn't know that still the Ottoman Imperial Turkey is going on. So therefore, in preparing a proposal for reuse of a historical balloon hangar, we focus on the concept of belonging, referring to the idea that building and structures are concept of not just physical object, but also social and cultural entities that are deeply connected to the communities and the context in which they exist. These balloon hangars, though now deemed obsolete, can still be repurposed and reused in innovative ways. This study aims to purpose the use of historical balloon hangars to enhance their value and usability while preserving the historical and cultural significance. So the idea and our motivation start up here. This is the modified Google Earth plan. So let me show you. Yes, this is. So here you can see our balloon hangar, and this is the planned road and junction. This is the European highway, and this is the junction going to Pazarkule, which is the border of the between Turkey and Greece. Edirne balloon hangar located in Edirne Central City County Town. Kemerler Quarter, Block 11, 63, and a parcel number 1, 2, and 6 is remain on a channelizing as I show you to Traffic Island. So unfortunately, you know, it's still the project is going on. There are two very important significance. I mean, the four pillars, we can say that, but we take into account is a history and the emphasizing the significance. So first, the building is an initial for Turkish Air Force history. This is the first monumental structure which belongs to it. That's why this is directly crucial for Turkish military history. Second, the balloon shed is also vital to understanding Balkan Wars, and Balkan Wars is a period of wars witnessing many contemporaneous warfare technology. Just 2 years before the First World War, Balkan War was the first war on the European continent in which the participating states possessed airplanes. Edirne balloon hangar was the only reinforced concrete hangar in that war. The building is essential to understand the balloon's history too. Buildings is the oldest hangar designed and erected for storing a combat balloon. In that way, this is also alluring. The balloon is also a great example of an early reinforced concrete structure in Turkey. This is the first building in Edirne to use reinforced concrete technology. Also, the fifth, and actually bonus, is building also crucial for Edirne's aviation history. Edirne even has no any airport currently. However, the city pioneered Turkish aviation, like the first long-distance flight in 1913 and the first flight with passengers, and actually our hangar is also a witness for the kind of history too.
I'm very sorry, very sorry for, I do not want to okay, so this is the second slide, right? Because for a period we have just seen you.
I guess this is the third. No, fourth.
Fourth?
Third, second, first.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm very sorry. Okay,
no problem.
I just wanted to make sure. Thank you so much.
No problem. If something happened, technical issues, just let me know that, you know, we can try to figure out. Anyway, we also try to showing substantial effort to reveal Edirne balloon hangar's history. While we took a kind of response, we considered that the work is in English, so international readers can also find its source to understand. For example, Balkan War. Yes, also it is the important war for like Bulgaria, Serbia. So some guests now we are hosting them. So we are also expecting their interesting too. The short history of the Edirne Balloon Hangar began with a telegraph paper dated 1910 that revealed the general staff, or in that way, Erkan-ı Harbiye, Daire-i Umumiye, in the period would like to modernize the military. Therefore, they wanted airborne warfare, so they are seeking a Drachen kite-type balloon for Edirne to strengthen the city's defense against the threats of Balkan countries. The operation of the Ottoman General Staff, having both balloons to Edirne, were interrupted in 1911 due to the Tripolitan War between Turkey and Ottoman and Italy. While researching Edirne balloon, we faced the correspondent papers that General Staff insisted on building the hangar as reinforced concrete. Also, we had a name as the contractor of the Edirne balloon park, Mr. or Monsieur Frisch Proxiper. The material is reinforced concrete in that way because resistant to fire in Turkey. So the period was when the insurance company did not vouch for wooden structures. The size is 2330 and also height is 12. The grammar is, we can also say the cathedralistic grammar or three-nave grammar, or we can say ABA format. The main part is covered by the valve, the concrete valve, and also the inclined porch. And also decoration is unique. Edirne balloon hangar is also nice example. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Very nice, huh? So is nice example for showing early concrete decorations such as molding plasters and reliefs on hat and jam surroundings. It's not easy to nowadays find kind of decorations. And also let me show you the plaster. This is also the Caveto plaster. This is also nice. Look to the situation of the contemporary situation of the balloon hangar. Iron reinforcements are seen as deterioration that occur in concrete bearing elements such as columns and beams. So terrible, so bad. So we have also another two balloon hangars we just examined. We would like to get some ideas to reuse proposals. So first one is the Copenhagen hangar or balloon hangar. Copenhagen hangar was built 5 years after the Edirne balloon hangar in 1917. The conditions are different between Turkey and Northern, not least related to culture, climate, and geographical distance. At the same time, similarly around the concept of a military hangar is present, and the belief is modernism as well. Thus, the balloons follow a modernistic idea. There is an architecture built with a function and emphasize the actual function on our example, store military balloons. For that reason, the hangar is built as a container to store the hangars, and thus follow the principle of form follows function. The statement was coined by the American architect Louis Sullivan in 1896 and gave the whole idea to describe the modernism and the idea behind modern architecture, built almost entirely of wood as barn in strict geometry, and the Danish hangar is still well preserved. I have to tell you that we are very lucky because two people get together for that study. Our precious contributor, associated professor Yahrut Olson also gives us a very clue about the modernistic thought and the philosophy on that. I'm continuing. The Danish hangar is placed in the district of the Amager in central Copenhagen. The build measures 18 meters height to 15 meters wide and 40 meters length. The aim of the hangar was storage the military gigantic observation balloons. As a background, the building structure served as a balloon hangar for 20 years until 1937, when airplanes took over as observer. You can remember this is the same year of the Hindenburg disaster, by the way. Then the balloons were no longer needed. During the World War II, German soldiers used the hangar for their own purpose, and after war, Allied refugees used the building to live in as dwelling. In 1961, the building was transferred to the children and young people for horse riding training and has had this same purpose since then. In 2007, the Danish company Realdania Bayan Banji, both the Copenhagen Hunger and Structure Restoration Riding Club, Rijdenklubben DEVIREN, is assured of being able to continue using the hangar. Realdania Bayan Banji, this is the company, restoring company, has replaced the unusable barns and stable on the property within a new riding hall, an outer riding track fault, and a stone mill for collecting rainwater. As mentioned, the unique balloon hangar is well built and intact after over 100 years of use. Also, this is another hangar that also we got as a model. Hangar Y. Y is the in French alphabet means the Y. That's why I will call the Y or hangar Y. You can understand. The building represent 19th century industrial buildings admired with its architectural form and material technical features, which are impressive in the form of the structure. The hangar Y shed light upon a definitive turning point within the metal design of the late 19th century. At this time, André de Dion designed the cross-sectional cultivated in two components for a pontoon framework, a method afterward taken up by Gustave Eiffel. By the way, André de Dion is the professor of the Gustave Eiffel. Its volume discharge up to the H is intriguing for aeronautical utilization. The edifice is formed within the structural steel I-profile frame carcass. The edifice is formed by the structural iron I-profile frame. So these are 15 pieces in the masonry footing, which is rising our structure. It is possible to see from the old photographs that the transverse beams were formed under those masonry path funding footings. By the way, our study is it's very important because Hangar Y a couple of weeks ago, which happened to official inauguration as a museum and the contemporary exhibition area. So our paper most likely will be the first English language paper to also examining the Hangar Y. But because of the time, we can't give the more details. So this is the chart, so you can also see the comparison, every features of the things. So also I have give you some information shortly. Balloon hangars have distinct architectural style that is characterized by their large open space and utilitarian design. The architecture of balloon hangars reflect the needs of the aviation industry and the practical consideration of housing and maintaining large aircraft. While they may vary in size and design, they are typically characterized by their utilitarian functionality and distinctive large-scale structures. Balloon hangars often have a simple functional aesthetic with a minimal ornamentation and a focus on the building practical purpose. However, some hangars may also incorporate elements of Art Deco, as you also get the idea with the decoration that I show you, or other architectural style, particularly if they were built during the early 20th century when these styles were popular. Hangar Y and the Copenhagen hangar example are important examples in terms of the refunctioning historical buildings. However, before refunctioning the Edirne balloon hangar with the modern approach, it would be useful to compare the current condition of selected hangar structures in the table below. I mean here, similar hangar structures that have, they give us a clue to how can we approach. So identifying potential reuse options. We give 3 options: recreational center, information learning, non-formal learning institution, and curatorial space, exhibition place or museological space, and industrial space. That's give. Those photos belongs to the balloon hangar, Copenhagen, so which is using as a riding club. So repurposing balloon hangar into the cultural center would provide a great community spaces for gathering, art, music, sports, and educational activity. The structure design and large open space of the hangar would make the ideal venue for concert, festival, community kind of things. So this is photos belongs to the Hangar Y. And this photo is the very old photo because Hangar Y, by the way, in the world, the oldest aviation museum, which is used as an aviation museum in 1931. And these are the very new photos inside the indoor of the building. They use as a more aviation museum. And author, by the way, Hangar Y is a very important for landscape architecture because André Lenotre is the very important landscape architecture designed area. So also they use for contemporary exhibition space. Also, another idea, industrial space. Those photo belongs to the one Google space, co-working space. They turn into the one Los Angeles timber wood framed balloon airplane hangar as a co-working. The hangars also can use in that way, so we can show you. But we have also know that the medium is the message. When we think of the aviation history of Edirne beyond the belonging activities, the idea that the hangar should be cultural space by taking the aviation history narrative into its theme, just like in Hangar Y, comes to the mind in that context. As Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message. Also, we also take into account that balloon hangar is also precious not only for building but also the historical environment. The location where Edirne balloon hangar is not residential area today, we can see an advantage for Edirne, which has set itself the goal of evaluating this area as a cultural city identity because this site is externally rich in terms of the cultural heritage. In the circle of the narrow periphery, it is very close to the Çardakaltı protected area here and our balloon hangar here. And the oldest settlement within the borders of the Edirne central town by the current definition. The Çardakaltı culture dated to 3rd and 4th millennium BCE represent a culture belonging to the post-Neolithic and early mining age, early Chalcolithic period. The region also embraced two distinct 19th century heritage. These are the Mahmudiye military post building here. So this is which is dated to 1873, and now is using as a closed prison. And the ruined central military hospital here, only one wall left, but it gives a fantastic picturesque ambiance. The restoration of Edirne Balloon Hangar, it's used as a cultural venue with three cultural uses in other heritage in the region will bring a new cultural support to the city. It is precious advantage. There are no difficulties to be faced with the social fabric in the gentrification studies in the neighborhood. There will be no settlements. That's why with also environments, I think Edirne Balloon Hangar we studied right now, but in the future we believe that our study will be pioneer for and to welcome to more other scholars to think on that and study together. So thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kutalmış Bayraktar, for this very interesting contribution. So let's have our last paper of the session. It's a co-work of Beyza Zihar, Alper Ünlü, Nevşet Gül Çanakçıoğlu. The title is An Evaluation on the Spatial Change of Çorum Binevler Housing Cooperative. We would like to welcome who will be presenting.
Yeah, I'm
Beyza
Zihar.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, welcome. Okay.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, now we see it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My beloved professors and friends and colleagues. My name is Beyza Zihar. I'm a Master of Science student at and also a teaching assistant at Özyeğin University. I will present to you the research titled as An Evaluation on the Spatial Change of Çorum Binevler Housing Cooperative that we studied with my beloved professors Alper Ünlü and Nevşet Gül Çanakçıoğlu. I'm sorry, I will start. Yeah, okay. The problem Okay, you can see the keywords here. Keywords of the research are determined as adaptation and fitness, spatial change, and the space syntax and housing. The problem is defined as, in this study, it will be tried to decipher the physical configuration of the houses, which the user customized by adding and subtracting, and the relationship with sociological variables with concrete data using space syntax analysis. In this way, cooperative housings and their spatial changes will be examined. To get a better understanding about spatial relations by getting numerical data, this space syntax is developed by Hilliard and Hansen. And actually, especially dwellings are more complex spaces with many meanings about abstract issues such as their user's social structure, cultural phenomena, and lifestyle. Although the architectural designer develops the design, it's also affected by the lifestyles of its users and in the post-use periods. Relations between the physical environment and societies have become intelligible with the space syntax method. In most societies, housings are dynamic structures that extend, divide, change, and then finally reshape a circular terrain ordered by the adapting and developing composition of the inhabitants. And so fitting of the functional units of the houses reflects sociality of the occupants. Spatial syntax analysis directed towards the design of the relationship between spaces and individuals rather than spaces has been applied in many residential buildings up to the present. I would like to mention about the Binevler Cooperative Project. Binevler Cooperative Housing Complex located in Çorum, designed by Alto and Behruz Çinici. Although the project was named as Binevler, as a result of their analysis, Çinici architects decided that the housing needs of at least 3,000 families should be met. The project, which is one of the first examples of the process-oriented approach in architecture, was created with the support of public, and as a result, 9 different typologies of housing design were decided. Here you can see the selected typologies K1 for this research particularly, K1 and K2. Original design, this work taken by the original design from Çinici's book Binevler. The lower floor is named as K1, the upper floor is named as K2 actually. Because of the attached order of the houses and also slope sides, K1 and K2 typologies shows 2 different versions. In this page you can see K1 and K2 typologies, first plans and sections, and first set of plans and sections. And now you can see the second set of plans and sections. Actually, they are like mirrored with each other. The research question is, in which units of the houses did change, additions and subtractions occur the most? What is the results when the integration, connectivity, mean depth, and occlusivity values of these units are compared with other units of the houses? Then the hypothesis of the study conducted as the syntactic changes can be observed in special configurations of buildings between pre and post occupancy, and these changes show similar results on both 5 selected houses. The changes, additions and deletions, will be mostly observed in most integrated and connected units of the houses. At this point, I have a paraphrase from Hilliard and Hansen. They said the relationship between the connectivity value and integration value gives the. Can you hear my voice? Actually, your you like. Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Integration value gives the concept of intelligibility and readability. According to the results of the analysis, the high integration values of the spaces that are connected with each other means that this space is readable. The most readable parts of the houses after personalization are the sections where the users spend the most time. Occluded sections, on the other hand, have changed as units where users spend less time according to behavior patterns. These are our hypotheses. And four syntactic parameters, as I mentioned before, are selected for this study. These are integration, connectivity, mean depth, occlusivity, but some of other parameters also conducted in this presentation to get better results and understanding. Methodology is simply comprised of in-situ observations and interviews, mapping, syntax to the application, combination, and comparison. Okay, now I will mention about the selected houses for observation and analysis. The first house was belonging to the HMA, and it was a K2 plan, a K2 type house actually. You can see the personalization that he made. Here is the original plan, and I'm sorry. Here is the original plan, and here is the present one. He added a balcony and depot to the entrance and closed it with windows, PVCs, enlarged the kitchen through the salon, added a bedroom instead of balcony, and removed the wall between two bedrooms to create a living room. He also removed the wall for design the washing machine, and he relocated the coal bunker, you can see here. And here you can see the analysis that are made by using syntax 2D of HMA house. The first horizontal line and this one belonging to the original plans, and the second line and this one you can see belonging to the present. You can see the differences between the analysis of integration, connectivity, and occlusivity by the changes of the color scheme in this analysis. But I will mention afterwards, actually. Second house was belonging to the AB, and it was also a K2 house. You can see the changes. AB has changed the location of the garden gate, as you can see, and therefore the shape of the staircase. She also added a balcony to the entrance of the house, but didn't have a PVC made. In the same way, she added a bedroom instead of existing balcony and created a living room by removing the wall between the existing bedrooms. I would like to point out that the furniture you see in all plans is the furniture that is above eye level. For example, the bunk bed belonging to the AB's children, some added cabinets. You can see the bunk bed here, and also the cabins. And okay, of course, the syntax TD isolate analysis and the changes of the color scheme in this analysis. And the third house listed was a K2 type house belonging to the MK. The plan is different from the previous K2s because this house is adjacent to the AB's house that I was mentioned before, and it's a mirrored plan actually. Unlike the previous examples, MK did not add a balcony. She enlarged her kitchen, added a large and long coat track to the entrance, and also used the balcony function as a bedroom. She rearranged the building, which was designed as a coal mine in the garden, as you can see here. And she she did it because the production activities. She produces pastries here, and you can see the others analysis. We can say that just adding a balcony or not can make big differences in analysis when we compare with the previous dwellings that I was mentioned. At this stage, I will evaluate the numerical values of three houses on the same table. While integration values increased in the kitchen, bedroom, and the living room in Hacı Murat Akın's house, they decreased in the hall. And connectivity values increased in the kitchen and living room, but decreased in the hall and bedroom in HMA's house. While the hall and bedroom are deepened, the kitchen and the living room are shallower, getting shallower. The bedroom became more visible, while the other three spaces became more occluded. In addition, the circularity values of the kitchen and bedroom have increased. While integration value increased in the kitchen and living room in AB's house, it decreased in the hall and bedroom. Connectivity has also changed similarly with the integration. Depth values decrease in the kitchen, while other areas tend to be shallower. Kitchen is where the AB spends most of her time, actually. And the opacity also tends to increase in areas outside the kitchen. On the other hand, circularity is the opposite. There's an increase in other areas except the kitchen. While the living room and the kitchen have become much more integrated and connected in the house of Mrs. Kaya, the integration and connectivity values of the hall and bedroom have decreased. And the occlusivity value only decreased in the hall. Circularity is also decreased in connection with occlusivity, as you can see. And looking at the mean average mathematical values, it has been observed that both three K2 type houses tend to be more integrated and connected. Likewise, all three houses have been shallower, reducing their average mean depth. And in addition, the large cabinets added to the present plans, the changes in the center point, as well as the changes made in the elements such as the entrance door, coal burner, and the stairs due to the size of the gardens, had a great impact on the whole analysis. And all three houses became more occluded when looking at the average values and increased their skewness values, actually. Okay. Now I will pass to the K2 type dwellings analysis. You can see here another house. This fourth house is a K2 type belonging to the RO and is located on the lower floor. Oktay and RO also removed the wall between the bedrooms and created a living room. And he moved the entrance door slightly forward and removed the walls between the kitchen and the rear service courtyard, adding part of the service courtyard to the kitchen and enlarging the kitchen area. He divided the building, which was designed as a coal house outside, into two and arranged half of it as a parking lot and the other half as a warehouse. He changed the location of the garden entrance, thus limiting the communication with the street on the front of his house. And also, the analysis, as you can see, slightly open plan of Oktay's house affected to the analysis to change. And the last house listed as a K1 belonging to the SA. There's the house is located on the ground floor as it's the K1, and SA made much less changes compared to the users of other houses. These changes can be summarized as closing a part of the rear service courtyard and including its storage area in the house, removing the wall between the bedrooms and rearing it as a living room. Besides, it has a lot of furniture that is above eye level. He also separated the part of the house which is expected to be more occluded in this part. And she also separated the bedroom and bathroom, where the bedroom and bathroom are located with a door. And you can see the analysis graphs of SA's house. I'm sorry. Now I will evaluate the numerical values of both two houses on the same table. I created a comparison between the numerical values afterwards. And while the living room becomes more dramatically integrated and connected, the room where RO spends the most time, the integration and connectivity values of other areas are decreasing. It's also clearly seen that the depth increases in the bedroom, hall, and kitchen, but the living room becomes shallower. The kitchen became more occluded while the hall and living room became more visible, and circularity likewise. In the house of SA, the living room has become more integrated and connected, just like our old house. In other areas, these values have decreased. While the living room is shallower, other areas tend to get deeper, actually. The kitchen and bedroom became more occluded, while other areas became more visible. While the circulation of the kitchen area has decreased, other areas have become more circular. And when the mean values are examined, it's observed that the integration and connectivity values in both K1 houses tend to decrease, unlike the K2 houses. It turns out that, on the other hand, mean depth, occlusivity, and circularity values increase. This situation observed in K1 houses may be related to the location change of coal pit in the gardens of both houses. And one of the first discussion question is what could be the reason for differences in syntactic analysis between K1 type houses and K2 type houses. Perhaps a major differences may be observed as the fact that K2 type houses can also see the garden on the ground floor, increases the visibility and integration values, and causes the area of analysis to grow as the parameters increase in K1 house and decrease in K2 house in the same function space, or vice versa. In both typologies, the garden area constitutes a large part of analysis. And it changed the garden may also cause the center to change. And therefore, the occlusivity value to increase in an area where the integration value increased. According to the first hypothesis produced, syntactic changes can be observed in the spatial configuration of buildings between pre and post-occupancy, like I mentioned before. And these changes show similar results on both selected houses. However, K1 type houses show very similar syntactic changes within themselves, while K2 type houses show similar syntactic changes within themselves. It has been observed that these two typologies, which show similar changes in themselves, do not show similar changes with each other, and even some changes create contrast. According to the second hypothesis produced, the changed additions and deletions will be mostly observed in most integrated connected units of the houses. However, as a result of mappings, interviews, and photographs, syntactic analysis have been shown that the whole area, which has the highest integration and connectivity value in both typologies, is not actually the area where the most intense changes take place. And according to the third hypothesis, the most integrated and connected parts of the houses after personalization are the sections where the users spend the most time. Occluded sections, on the other hand, have changed as units where users spend less time, according to the behavior patterns. Based on this, questions about behavioral patterns were asked in interviews, and the areas where the users spent the most time in the interior were determined. It has been revealed that the high integration and connectivity data obtained as a result of the analysis coincide with the areas that users use the most. And that was all. Thank you for your listening. I'm sorry, can you hear my voice?
Yes, I can hear you. Professor will say something, I think.
I'm sorry.
Professor, can you hear me? We are waiting for the connection.
Excuse me, I think there was a disconnection. Do you see me now?
No, the scene is black now.
The scene is black. Okay, my camera is.
Yes, now it is working.
Okay, I'm very sorry for that. I have no idea why 2 times I've been disconnected. I was thinking that our dear presenter was disconnected. Anyway, so we would like to thank also to our presenter, Beyza Zihar. I'm very sorry that I couldn't hear the last words, but as far as I understand, you already concluded with the last slide. So I would like to thank the whole participants, and maybe it's since we have a little bit extended our time, but it's time to take questions. Are there any questions I would like to ask to the whole audience? Not yet, but I would like to thank the whole 4 presentations. That was a very interesting session, and it is giving us a very interesting geographic picture too. We started with Belgrade and then continued with Beşiktaş, then Edirne. First 2 was about more city scene or from urban area. Belgrade started with the housing complex, which was called the Block 28, and that was a valuable visual experience, the user experience, and how it could be seen as a part of the unforgettable heritage, and how the users or the coming people to the city can instill the unique values in this heritage. And the second was on Beşiktaş, the very well-known, whoever visited Istanbul, is a very well-known bazaar, and it was a very valuable contribution with the analysis of space syntax. I guess this was the second paper, the housing complex in Çorum, which was presented by Beyza Zihar. Çorum Bin Evler was again an analysis by space syntax method, let's say. It's not a method, I know it's a very well-known, let's say, a global network of understanding space, and to see it from 2 different parts. The Edirne presentation, which was on the balloon hangar, was a little bit different than the rest, since it was on the countryside, but which also forced us to think about, to consider the already lost values, which are maybe lost in the scene. But yeah, I see Mr. Seçkin Puyan. I would like to welcome your question first. But it was a very interesting session. So let's have your question, Mr. Seçkin Puyan.
In fact, our aim is in this paper to present our suggestions about reactivation and reuse of Edirne balloon hangar.
That is right. That is right. I was going to express this at the end, because that was a little bit different from the other presentations, which is including the idea of how we can take a countryside leftover building and turn it into a larger urban area, or make it a part of the living urban area again, because the last slide was about this, I guess. The whole area includes different buildings from different periods, or the similar periods of the military heritage, and that's a very interesting point too. I think the whole work, the whole session was quite interesting. I was, if you would like to add something, the dear presenter.
Can I quite add something on that?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. In fact, we present this paper for suggestion about reactivation and reuse of dead cultural heritage. And of course, it's a lot to say about this, because it's not easy, and we must have to emphasize that to prevent the loss of this hangar that will we find valuable. So we are trying to prevent it from being lost in a new road project by mentioning the historical importance of only the reuse of reactivation of the balloon hangar, but as well as valuable structures like the Edirne Central Military Hospital around this, and the formations like Çardakaltı. We would like that places like a natural seat areas, natural cultural heritage seat areas, so that we can preserve this area. And the fact that it's our cultural heritages, because, I mean, as concluding, our suggestions for the future Edirne Balloon Hangar, as Ms. also suggested, that taking a responsibility for the hangars in steps. It's like the first step will be the help inhabitants and tourists to find the way out the hangar, to make the structure of the building visible again. That can be done drawing a cycle paths from the city that around the building itself maybe, or the area around the fields and the nature are parts of the cultural heritage. Maybe some specific plants and flowers can be planted, whatever. What we mean that we have to preserve that area as a cultural heritage, beginning with the balloon hangar. That's my addition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, because that's quite valuable, since the whole great big word of this international symposium is the responsibility, and all these 4 presentations included in the very. A further step is that it goes us to not to see them as the buildings itself only, but the surrounding area and all these ideas behind it, behind this analysis and suggestions for the future protection, to make them a part of the living urban system, to gain them into the urban living area. So that's also, I believe, is quite valuable for the sustainability, including our great responsibilities like ethics and sustainability. These are great valuable papers. Thank you for the whole contributions. If there is any more question you would like to take. I don't see it, but okay, thank you for your participation. And also, Esma Hocam. Please, Esma Hocam. I see that, yeah, Esma Hocam, please, welcome.
Your microphone is muted.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for all the presentations, and your directors' presentations contain very interesting topics and very successful. Thanks to everyone. I hope we will get together again. Thank you. Take care yourself.
Yeah, well, I also
Bye.
thank you for this great honor of having being the chair of this very valuable session. Thank you to the whole Trakya University and all the participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you again. See you.
Thank you very much.